And we're looking forward to the Linfield game, Linfield versus Pacific Lutheran, this Saturday, first round, Division III NCAA playoffs. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Dave.
How you doing?
I am doing absolutely fine and so much looking forward to Saturday and the Lutes and the Cats. Always a good matchup with that school.
There's frost on the football this morning.
Boy, there's no doubt about it, is there? We were back in Michigan for a basketball game this past Monday night, and I thought it was cold back there, but it is just as cold out here.
Yeah, and we're expecting a few more days of that. Sunny days, high temperatures during the day should be in the mid to the upper 40s. Overnight lows tonight could drop down to 22 in some areas, maybe down to the teens, as is a high-pressure system building up, keeping all the bad weather out or all the rainy weather out, but making it sunny days and clear, cold nights. Lows around 30 degrees all the way through midweek. Daytime highs mid to the upper 40s. That's a quick look at the forecast. So let's take a quick look at the game. Now, the game coming up this Saturday is first-round playoff Division III NCAA, and it's the Wildcats have drawn home field advantage because of their record. Great season for the Wildcats. And people might look at the scorecard and say, well, they've already played Pacific Lutheran earlier this year. They won 29-0. But it's a different Wildcat team this time, isn't it?
Well, it's a different Wildcat team, and the reason why we're probably playing Linfield and PLU in the first-round game in the Linfield, Dave, is because there are too few Division III schools out here on the West Coast. There are only two Division III conferences, as they were, the Northwest Conference and the Southern California Interscholastic Athletic League, or the SCIAC is what they call it, SCIAC. And you have those two leagues, and that's it. Nobody else. When you look for the next nearest Division III program, you're looking in Wisconsin, Minnesota, or Texas. So there are only two on the West Coast, and we all know that the NCAA is very thrifty. They like to save money. So if they could possibly have a matchup with the Wildcats and the Lutes, they would probably have that matchup right away because, number one, they're evenly matched, so it'll be a good playoff game. Number two, the expenses for the NCAA are minimized. And now people might say, well, why are you talking about expenses when you should be talking about football? Expenses are paid for the players and for the transportation. Everything else is picked up by the respective schools. Well, Pacific Lutheran will simply jump on a bus in Parkland, Washington. It will take them 3 hours and 15 minutes to drive down here. They do not have to stay anywhere overnight. They come down here, they get off the bus, they go into one of the gyms at Linfield, they dress, they come out, they play the game, they go to the shower room, get redressed, back on the bus, and they go back home. So there's not one night of overnight stay. The only expense for Pacific Lutheran would be the gasoline for the bus and the bus itself and whatever is paid to the driver of the bus. So the NCAA is trying to minimize expenses as much as possible and still have a good first-round matchup. So there's absolutely no surprise that we are playing Pacific Lutheran for the second year in a row in the opening round of the playoffs. It really all comes down to money.
So as we get past the money thing and we look at let's look at the game. We've drawn Pacific Lutheran. Linfield won 29-0 in the first time that they met earlier this year. But since then, the Wildcats have been banged up just a bit.
They have been banged up injury-wise. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Their starting All-American defensive tackle, Tyler Steele, will not play. Tyler suffered a pretty serious knee injury this past weekend against Pacific University, and he will have surgery this coming week. He already was coming off a medical redshirt year where he took all of last year off after he hurt his knee so he could come back, rehabilitate, and play this year. And he played very well up until the Pacific game, but in the second quarter, he went down with a knee injury, refused to let anybody help him off the field. He just kind of brushed their hands away, as is typical of Tyler Steele. I would say nicely, has a mind of his own, And Tyler, when he stepped off the field, he took 2 steps off the field and then pretty much just crumpled and went down. So he will have a surgery probably coming up this week. He will be rehabilitated again. But Spencer's career, or Tyler's career at Linfield, unfortunately, is all done. And he has really been one of the great players to come through Joseph Smith's program out of McMinnville.
That's sad to hear. That's too bad. So what's his prognosis? How much time to heal? Obviously, he's not going to be able to play in the next month or two. But what's it look like going down the road?
Well, long term, obviously, they hope that he'll be okay. He does have some ligament damage in his leg, and he will have microfracture surgery coming up. He had a torn meniscus and some ligament damage, and those two together will be the cause of the fracture surgery on his leg. Fortunately, it was not the ACL that he had a year ago prior to the Cal Lutheran game. It was not his ACL. It was a different part of the knee that was injured, but the injury did take place in the knee that did suffer the ACL tear last year. So he will have a lot of scars to show his grandchildren and his family, and his football career now has come to an end.
So let's take a look at the field. What's likely to happen? Are we going to see an air game? We're going to see a lot of passing, running. What do you think is going to shake out? And then let's take a look at the weather forecast just so we know what we've got Saturday. Saturday, we're looking for sunny skies, which is nice. Light wind, northeast will be about 8 miles an hour, so it's going to be a sunny, cool day. Highs in the mid-40s, so it's not going to be bad weather. We're not going to have rain, snow, a lot of wind. It's going to be a little cool, but it's going to be clear skies. What do you think?
Linfield and Pacific Lutheran, I think it's about the best matchup in the entire Northwest Conference. And the reason I say that, Dave, is because I think they both have the best defensive units. Doesn't mean it'll be a boring game whatsoever. Both teams are able to score. Linfield scores 55 points a game. They're the number one scoring Division III team of 300-plus teams in America. They are number one. They score more points than anybody else. Pacific Lutheran University, on the other hand, has a very, very good defense. You take a look at the fact that Linfield averaged 55 points a game, but against Pacific Lutheran in the regular season, Linfield Wildcats could only score 29 points. Fairly interesting of how shy they were, even reaching their average per game against Pacific Lutheran. So will it be an all-out shootout with a final score of, say, 81-80 or something like that? Well, once you kick it off, anything can happen, Dave, but I really don't think that will be the final score in this game. I think it's going to be a very close game. Pacific Lutheran will go into it with a tremendous amount of momentum because their head coach, Scott Western, has never defeated Linfield in 11 outings. He is 0-for-11 in playing Linfield. He lost last year's exhibition game. He has not won a game since 2001, and that game was played at the Cat Dome, ironically. Since that time, he has lost every single game against Linfield. So percentages tell you that, wait a minute, something should be turning around pretty quickly here for Pacific Lutheran University. For those people who follow the Linfield Wildcats, they don't want anything turning around this weekend. They'd like the trend to continue of Linfield dominating TLU. But we shall see on Saturday afternoon.
See, that's what makes it what makes it interesting is you've got a matchup like this. Historically, the numbers say that Linfield is the favored, but you got to wonder what's going on in the mind of the coach of Pacific Lutheran and the players, because wouldn't it be cool to be a spoiler for Linfield and to kick them out so you can – this is a single elimination, right? So once you're out, you go home.
Exactly. Once you lose, you are now on the sideline.
So, and let's play. Just look at it through the other team's eyes. And wouldn't it be fun to be a sport? Not that I'm wanting them to do that. Please understand that. But baseball and football, and sometimes sports is a psychological game, as you well know. And you got to wonder what's going on in their mind. It's, first round Division III, they definitely want to go all the way. And along the way, wouldn't it be fun to stop Linfield? And especially when you're the coach and you have the 0-11 record, there's got to be, I don't want to say an axe to grind, but definitely some a historical perspective you want to change.
Well, no doubt, Dave. I think there's a tremendous amount of motivation for Pacific Lutheran University in this game. At the same time, I wouldn't say there's any lack of motivation on Linfield's side, because this group of seniors, and there are 32 seniors who will play their very last game in a Linfield uniform this Saturday, if indeed they lose. They made a pact amongst themselves 4 years ago when they came to Linfield. They literally got together and said, we're the new kids on the block. We want to be a part of a championship team. Well, this year is their last year. They won't be playing next year. We will lose almost every starter we have on the defensive unit to graduation. So while PLU is motivated by the fact that they have not won since 2001 over Linfield, Linfield is motivated by the fact of, we've been talking to ourselves for 4 years about getting to the finals. This is just one hurdle on the way to the finals and our goal, and we certainly want to get by Pacific Lutheran. So I would say that there is a plethora of motivation on both sides.
We talked about a plethora of motivation. One of the things I love about watching sports, it really makes it fun and exciting, is they call it momentum. There's both these teams have a lot of motivation. They got a lot at stake. They both want to go on. They both, for different reasons, are highly motivated to win this game. And it's interesting to see how that manifests itself on the field. It can do it any number of ways, but it makes for an exciting game because there's a lot of emotion, a lot of adrenaline going.
Well, the one thing I like about this series with Pacific Lutheran, Dave, is that these are not only the two best programs in the Northwest Conference, but they are the two classiest programs in the conference. There's no trash talking out on the field during the game. There's no fighting. There's no screaming. There's no biting. These are just kids who want to play football, but they understand that they will play it within the parameters that have been set down by the coaching staff. And the Linfield coaching staff and the Pacific Lutheran coaching staff, they do a wonderful job of teaching these student athletes not just the game of football, but they work with them throughout their 4 years on campus, whether it be Parkland, Washington, or McMinnville, Oregon. They work on life skills, and it is amazing. I have met players from both teams and after games, and it is amazing that instead of this, well, hey, dude, how are you? Or, yeah, man, what's going on with you? Mm-hmm. It's a handshake. It's a firm look in the eye, and you just know that these young men are on the path to some type of success in whatever they want to do, because they have learned how to properly communicate with people, listen to other people, not do all the talking themselves. They are just very, very mature young men coming out of two very well-thought-of private schools, Pacific Lutheran and Linfield. So it really will be a treat to see these two teams play. And, just a note that I would throw in, even their broadcaster, Steve Thomas, has been a friend of mine for, say, 20-plus years. He used to be the voice of the Seattle Seahawks. He does Pacific Lutheran University football now. Absolute perfect gentleman, a good friend that I can sit and visit with prior to the game and ask about his team, and he can ask me about my team, and we can just visit. It's just a really nice affair whenever Linfield and Pacific Lutheran University football teams get together for a playoff game, and that's what we have coming up at Maxwell Field on Saturday.
Looking forward to it, and looking forward to seeing like to see the Wildcats go all the way this year. Wouldn't it be nice to bring home another national championship?
Well, it certainly would. 2004 really started seeming like a long time ago since they have won one. They have won a lot of Northwest Conference titles in between, but they have not been able to win, you could say, all the marbles and dominate the country. But they feel like this is a team that could do it. Now, they have suffered some injuries, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and somehow they're going to have to get around that. But it would take them 4 rounds of winning to get to the Alonzo Stagg Championship Bowl, and that would be played in December back in Salem, Roanoke, Virginia. And that's where we went back in December of 2004. But I know the Cats would like to go back to get again. And I think it's interesting, too, that the only 2 teams to win national championships out of this conference, Dave, are Linfield in 2004 and Pacific Lutheran in 1999. No other school in our conference has ever won the football national championship.
All right. We do want to mention to people, we're getting a lot of phone calls about this, wondering what the schedule looks like on KLYC, because we're following the Dayton Pirates as they're playing a semifinal game in Bend. So it's an out-of-area game that a lot of people want to listen to, and some of them can't drive to. So the schedule for this Saturday is the pregame at 11:30 in a game that will be played in McMinnville at the Cat Dome. Pacific Lutheran versus the Wildcats. And the pregame will be 11:30, kickoff at noon, and that game will be broadcast live on AM 1260 KLYC. Then at 3 o'clock, we're scheduled to pick up the game with the Dayton Pirates versus the Nissa Bulldogs. It's going to be a semifinal matchup coming to you from Summit High School in Bend. That game will be live on KLYC, and that game will also be streamed on our websites. Excuse me, KLYC.us and OregonPulse.com. And if you missed the game, you can listen to a replay on our websites as well. We can't stream the Linfield game on our websites because of an agreement with Linfield, but we will carry both games. We've had a lot of calls wondering if the Linfield game was going to bump the Dayton game off the air. And no, because of the schedule this week, we'll be able to do one game and then the other. So we want to make a mention of that every time we get, because there seems to be quite a bit of confusion out there about that. So we're looking forward to exciting games.
Well, I think we're going to have a couple of good ones. I know Linfield and Pacific will be an excellent game to go on. Pacific Lutheran University and Linfield. In high school football, there is absolutely nothing like high school football throughout this country. It is exciting. The players are obviously up for any playoff game. The fans are into it. The communities are definitely into it. There is something very, very special about high school football, and we certainly wouldn't want to miss that playoff game that is coming up in the high school ranks following the Linfield Pacific Lutheran game coming up Saturday afternoon.
Okay, so we're looking forward to it, and then we'll keep doing these Thursday conversations as long as Linfield is moving forward in the playoffs, so we hope to be talking to you for the next month.
Well, if Linfield wins this game coming up on Saturday, they will remain alive. There are no buys in playoff rounds. You have to play every single week is what you have to do. And, of course, Linfield Wildcats, they play Pacific Lutheran this weekend. If they win this game, they would then have to play the winner of the game between Hampton Sydney College and Marysville of Tennessee. Now, we don't know which of those 2 teams is a stronger team, but whoever wins that game will play Linfield. And then, of course, we have to wait to see, does Linfield get to play at home, or do we have to pack all of our bags, and do we have to go out on the road and play somebody away from home, where, of course, we've won every single game this year. So we'll simply have to wait and see what the schedule man says. We can only say for sure the second round of the playoffs, wherever we play, we will start the game at 12 noon local time. And unfortunately, Dave, that is the only thing I know right now.
So on those travel expenses, does the school pick them up, or does NCAA?
Well, the NCAA will pick up the maximum side of the expenses, Dave, and the school will pick up the balance. For example, the NCAA, I think, picks up the expenses for, say, 53 players. I think the NCAA picks up the expenses for the medical staff and for the coaches' staff. But say for the broadcasters, the sports information director, the athletic director, peripheral personnel that may go along on the trip,
that has to be picked up by the school itself.
Okay, well, we're looking forward to an exciting game, 2 exciting games this Saturday. Great talking to you, Bill. Sorry for the phone hookup problem again. We're working on getting that fixed. But looking forward to 2 exciting games. We got to get out of the studio here. There's an off-air interview we're scheduled to do. And I appreciate talking to you again.
Well, Dave, thank you very much for your support. And I think we're going to have a couple of great games on KLYC this weekend, which is really great to see this brand new station in Yamhill County just covering everything that is going on locally, because that's what people really, really care about. It's what's happening in my own backyard, and that's exactly what you and your wife Norma are doing as owners of KLYC Radio in McMinnville.
Okay, well, thank you for those kind words on that. We'll bid you adieu, Bill Johnson, the voice of the Linfield Wildcats, and we're going to move on and take a look at the weather forecast coming up.